Tehran. The night sky is lit by hundreds of thousands of lights, but this is not a celebration. This is a city shouting. From rooftops across the capital, people chant the same words, Allahu Akbar, again and again. Every night the sound spreads across the city, turning Tehran into a single voice. In the streets, there are barricades. Cars are burning. Soldiers try to hold control of the capital. But the more force the government uses, the more people flood the streets. Just a few years earlier, Iran was considered one of the most stable countries in the Middle East. Oil revenues were rising. Its army was among the strongest in the region. And the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, spoke about turning Iran into a future superpower. But now, the regime is cracking. Within months, the Shah will leave the country. A monarchy that ruled Iran for more than 2,000 years will disappear. And a man the regime believed had been forgotten in exile will return to lead a revolution. His name is Ruhollah Khomeini. To understand how this happened, we need to go back several decades. After the Second World War, Iran found itself in a unique position. The country possessed some of the largest oil reserves in the world. Its geography made it strategically vital for the West. For that reason, Iran gradually became one of the most important allies of the United States in the Middle East. In 1953, an event took place that would permanently shape Iran's political future. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh attempted to nationalize the country's oil industry. The decision triggered a crisis with Britain and the United States. Within months, Mossadegh was overthrown in a coup supported by Western intelligence services. Power returned to the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. After that moment, Iran began to change rapidly. The Shah launched a program of reforms known as the White Revolution. Its goal was modernization, land reform, industrial expansion, broader access to education, new rights for women. Economically, the country did begin to grow, but the reforms created a new problem. The political system became increasingly authoritarian. Opposition parties were banned. Criticism of the government was suppressed, and the main instrument of control became the secret police. Savak, arrests, interrogations, disappearances. All of this became part of the political landscape. Gradually, modernization stopped generating support. Instead, it began producing resentment, especially among religious circles. And within that environment, a new voice of opposition began to emerge. In the early 1960s, one of the loudest critics of the Shah appeared in the religious city of Qom. His name was Ruhollah Khomeini. He accused the Shah of destroying Islamic traditions and turning Iran into a dependent state of the West. In his speeches, he spoke about corruption in government, about American influence, and about the need to restore Islamic principles to the country. These sermons quickly made him popular among students, clerics, and parts of the population. But for the Shah, this popularity was dangerous. In 1964, Khomeini was arrested and sent into exile, first to Turkey, later to Iraq. The regime believed that, far from the country, he would slowly lose his influence. The opposite happened. From exile, Khomeini continued recording speeches and messages. Cassette tapes carrying his sermons were smuggled into Iran. They spread from mosque to mosque, from city to city. Gradually, his name became a symbol of resistance to the regime. By the early 1970s, Iran was experiencing an economic boom. After the oil crisis of 1973, global oil prices surged. Government revenue multiplied. The Shah launched massive modernization projects. Factories were built. Infrastructure expanded. Cities grew rapidly. The military purchased advanced Western weapons. The goal was clear. Iran was supposed to become the new superpower of the region, but rapid growth brought new problems. Modernization moved faster than society could adapt. Millions of people left rural areas and moved to cities. Housing became expensive, inflation increased. The gap between rich and poor widened. For some, Iran became a symbol of progress. For others, it became a symbol of lost traditions and foreign influence. Gradually, a broad opposition to the Shah began to form. Religious leaders, students, nationalists, left-wing organizations. They disagreed on almost everything, but they shared one demand: the Shah had to go. 1978 became the turning point. In January, a government newspaper published an article insulting Khomeini. For the authorities, it seemed like routine propaganda, but the reaction was immediate. In the city of Qom, protests erupted. Police opened fire. Demonstrators were killed. In Iranian tradition, mourning ceremonies are held 40 days after a death. 40 days later, protests began again, but this time in other cities. Then, 40 days later again and again. The country entered a cycle of demonstrations that kept growing. Every protest gathered more people. Every clash produced more victims, and every victim became a new martyr. By the end of the year, protests were spreading across the entire country. September 1978. Tehran. Thousands of protesters gather in Jaleh Square. They demand the Shah's resignation. The government declares martial law. The army receives orders to disperse the crowd. When the protesters refuse to leave, soldiers open fire. The exact number of victims is still debated, but hundreds are believed to have been killed. The day becomes known as Black Friday. The government intended to demonstrate strength. Instead, it destroyed the remaining trust in the regime. Even moderate politicians began to call for change, and the protests only grew larger. By the end of 1978, one thing becomes clear. The Shah's authority is beginning to collapse. Strikes paralyze the country. Factories shut down. Government offices stop functioning. But the most dangerous development for the regime is happening elsewhere. Iran's oil industry, the main source of national income, stops operating. Without oil, the country is losing millions of dollars every day. The economy begins to freeze. In the streets, hundreds of thousands of protesters gather. And every day their numbers grow. The government tries to maintain control. But now the problem is no longer only the protests. The army begins to hesitate. Some units refuse to fire on demonstrators. Soldiers start joining the protesters. For any government, this is the moment when the system begins to break. On January 16, 1979, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi leaves Iran. Officially, it is a temporary trip for medical treatment. In reality, it is the end of his rule. Across the country, crowds pour into the streets. For some, it is the end of an era. For others, it is the beginning of a revolution. But the most dramatic moment is still ahead. February 1st, 1979. An Air France plane lands at Tehran airport. On board is the man the regime expelled from the country almost 15 years earlier, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. When he steps off the plane, Iran is no longer the same country. By some estimates, several million people gather to greet him. It becomes one of the largest public demonstrations in modern history. People stand on rooftops, on highways, on bridges. In that moment, it becomes clear. The political system that ruled the country for decades will not return. In the days that follow, revolutionary groups begin taking control of key institutions, military bases, television stations, government buildings. The army slowly begins to disintegrate. On February 11, 1979, the monarchy officially collapses. A few months later, a national referendum transforms Iran into the Islamic Republic. The regime collapsed quickly, but the reasons had been building for decades. The first problem was the authoritarian political system. Opposition parties were banned, political dissent was suppressed, protests were crushed by force. This did not eliminate dissatisfaction. it only forced it underground. The second factor was rapid modernization. The Shah tried to transform Iran into a modern industrial state. But for many people, these reforms destroyed familiar social structures. The third factor was economic pressure. Despite enormous oil revenues, inequality increased. Inflation began to undermine living standards. The fourth factor was the emergence of a powerful ideological leader. Ayatollah Khomeini managed to unite very different social groups: religious leaders, students, nationalists, workers. And finally, the decisive moment came when the army stopped defending the regime. Once the military withdrew its support, the fate of the government was sealed. The Iranian Revolution changed the political landscape of the Middle East. A monarchy that had existed in Iran for more than 2,000 years disappeared. In its place emerged a new political system, the Islamic Republic. For many countries, this transformation came as a shock. Iran, which had long been one of the closest allies of the United States in the region, quickly began to shift its foreign policy. The new leadership declared independence from Western influence. Its goal was to build a state based on Islamic political principles. But this was also the moment when relations between Iran and the United States began to deteriorate rapidly. And within months, another event would push those relations into a full crisis. The Iranian Revolution became one of the most unexpected political transformations of the 20th century. A regime that appeared strong and stable disappeared within months. A country once considered the West's most reliable ally in the region became one of its most determined opponents. But the real confrontation between Iran and the United States began after the revolution. In November 1979, a group of students would storm the American embassy in Tehran and seize American diplomats. The crisis would last 444 days, and it would permanently reshape relations between the two countries. That is the story we will explore in the next video.